Hi, this is Bruce, and we've got our photo gallery here, and as you can see, it's mobile first, and we've made it responsive, right? So going from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 columns, and the images are resizing. We've done that properly and stuff like that. So the problem is, if we're looking at our images, the thumbnails can be rather small. And so what we'd like to do is when we click on them, that we can open up a larger size. We can see here in MDN, the Mozilla Developer Network, that the dialog element can be used for both modal and non-modal dialog boxes. So we're going to be using it as a modal in order to display those larger images. So let's get started. I'm going to come down, scroll down here, and I'm going to copy this. And then you can see, obviously, we've got our well-structured HTML. It's semantic, using figures and fig captions and things like that, although I still need to fill in my fig captions. And so below the gallery section, but above the footer, I'm just going to paste in that dialog box. Okay. But let's start off. We're going to put the same kind of image and fig caption in there, right? So if we replace the paragraph here with an image, we'll just use a thumbnail for now, and the fig caption is going to be, I don't know, heading out to C. And if we refresh that, we can see it says heading out to C. So I'm going to go into my my CSS, and obviously we've got our our header, then we've got our gallery, then we've got our footer, then we've got our media queries. So right in here would be a good place to put our modal styles. And I'm just going to hit Command and slash to make that a comment. So for the dialog, we're going to do position fixed. Right, so this is going to fix the position in the browser, and we will do width. Let's do 100 viewport width, and we'll do height, and we'll set the height to, let's say, 90 viewport height. Okay, so we've got the position fixed, and let's set the top to, I don't know, 5 viewport height. So it should be down 5% from the top of the viewport. And there we go, right? So we can see it here. And I'm going to go back and set it to max width and max height. Maybe that'll work. Okay. So that should be good. And now let's center it. So I'm just going to go margin 0 auto, so no margin on the top and bottom, and margins on the left and right will be auto, so essentially the same on both sides, and so that essentially centers it. And just so we know, if I come in here and I just edit the HTML, eventually we're going to replace the thumbnail with the large image, and we can see when we do that, right, then we get the large image. And then we have to add, in order to get the image to size properly, we have to go dialog, image, width, 100%. There we go. And now you can see it's filling up the entire screen. And if we click OK, it should close. So the reason it's closing is because this form method dialog with the OK button, or actually I'll put close for now, or we can put an X. It's automatically built into the browser. When you click on the close button, it will close this. If we wanted to, we could put it at the top, and we can worry about the position later. But for now, I think it's we'll just leave it there. Okay. In the CSS, right, we can add a backdrop, and we can add a color to it. And we go dialog, and then add the backdrop pseudo element. It's slightly different format from that, just because I'm making it just a background color, and we can do RGB, and I'm going to do dark, so 16, 16, 16, and I'll put 0.8, so 80% alpha, right? So should be like a dark gray, and I'll just do background. We'll see if it works when we open it up. So what I want to do is add JavaScript, and you can see here I've already created a script link to it, just kind of anticipating it. I tend to put my JavaScripts right at the bottom, making sure all the elements in the HTML have loaded before doing it. You can also put it at the top. If you put it at the top, make sure you put defer, so that the JavaScript only loads when the other elements are loading. And you're going to see in a second, we're going to be referring to those elements, obviously the thumbnails and the dialog box in our JavaScript code. So I'm going to right click and do new folder. And I'm going to call it JavaScript, and then I'm going to right click and do new file, and I'm going to call it gallery.js, right, to match my file there. So let's start off by adding a console log and say gallery.js is loaded. And we'll come back and refresh, and then here I just want to see that my JavaScript is in fact loading properly, and I know that because in the console I can see that the gallery.js is being loaded on line 1 of my gallery.js, whatever. Okay, here we go. So I'm just going to hit command / to comment that out. We don't need it anymore. Let me just come back here and get rid of this for now, because we're going to be opening it soon, and refresh. So the first thing we want to do is make it so that when we click on the thumbnails, that dialog box opens. So in order to do that, we're going to have to add click events to all the thumbnails. Okay. So I'm going to come over back here to my JavaScript, and I'm going to create a variable. In this case, I'm going to use constant, because this variable is not going to change. I'm going to call it thumbnails, because, that's what they are. And then I'm going to use query selector. And in this case, I'm going to use query selector all. And that's because I don't want to select just one figure. I want to select all the figures. Okay. And so this should be selecting all of the figures. So I've got 24 or 25 figures here. So it should select all of these figures and create a list or an array with those. So let's just see if that's working. Again, we can do a console log, and we can return thumbnails, or we can specify thumbnails in the parameter. And then up here you can see, right, we had gallery is loaded with quotations around it, but down here we don't put quotations because this is referring to the thumbnails array or object, so it's referring to a variable, right? Otherwise it would just print out thumbnails. So let's come back here and refresh, and you can see here I've got 23 figures that are being referred to in the code. So we know that's working. But now what we need to do is make it so that when we that when we click on these, something happens. We've got some sort of a function, some sort of a reaction. So I'm going to loop through this list or this array of all the figures that we've put in this thumbnails list, and I'm going to use the for each. Thumbnails for each. And then in here, we need to give each of those thumbnails a name. So I'm just going to call them thumb, right? So each individual thumb. I could put thumbnails, but sometimes it's hard to see the difference between plural and singular, and so thumb makes it a little easier. Then we're going to use an arrow function. So this is just saying, it's going to create a function, but without a name, and it's a handy little construct in JavaScript. So I've got my arrow function, and then the function, or the things that are going to happen, we put between two curly braces. So you can see the for each is a method, and we put those in parentheses or rounded brackets, and then the function, or here, is we're going to put those in curly braces. So let's just do again a console log just to make sure that we're getting those thumbs. Should be 24, but I'm not sure why they're different. Some are showing the figures and some are showing the other ones. Anyway, we'll see what happens as we move forward. Okay, so you can see here we've got we're looping through. We're getting all the thumbnails, and now what we need to do is add that event listener. So for each thumb, I'm going to add an event listener. We're going to make it a click event. And when we click, we want to call a function that opens up the modal or shows the modal. So let's call this show modal. So now what we have to do is make a function and give it the name show modal. So to instantiate or to create a function, we write function, then we write its name, and then we put curly braces then we put parentheses where we can pass in parameters or we can pass in information, and then curly braces for the start and end of the show modal function, or the start and end of the function. In here, because this is a click event, we can put event, or we could put EV or EVT or George or whatever we want. Doesn't really matter, but this will allow us to capture those events. So now let's just check to see that the click events are working. So I'm going to do a console. Let's do info this time. And I'm going to do event. And so now if I come back here and click, we can see that I'm getting pointer events. And if I do event.target, right, we should see if I'm clicking on the image, or we should see if I'm clicking on the fig caption, or we should see if I'm clicking on kind of this little space down below where there's a figure. Okay, so the way it's working right now is we have three different things that we're clicking on, but what we want is when we're clicking, we want to get the entire element, or we want to be able to get the image and the fig caption inside the element. So we're going to use a little trick here. Where is it here? Closest. Closest allows us to traverse up the DOM until we get an element that matches the given selector. Right? So we're going to do closest, and we're going to be looking for the figure. Right? So the element is the event target. And then we're going to do closest figure. And let's see if this works. So if I click on the image, right here in the middle, you can see it gives me figure. Right? If I click on the fig caption, you can still see that it gives me the figure. And if I click on the little space that's the figure below, you can still see it gives me figure. So now that we've got the figure, what we can do is we can, now that we've got that selected, we'll be able to put those into the modal. So let's start off by doing opening up the modal or showing the modal. In order to be able to do that, I need to make I need to do a selection of the modal or of the dialog. So again, I'm going to make another variable that's constant. I'm going to call it modal, and the element that we're looking for, there's only one, so it's not query selector all. The element we're looking for is dialog, right? And so it's dialog here, right? Because the actual tag that I'm using for this modal is dialog. And I could have called it dialog, but we'll call it modal just because we're using the dialog as a modal. So now that I've got this constant, this variable, I should be able to go modal show modal. And so this is a built-in method, right? And we're getting that from right here, right? So you can see in the MDN, they've created a button that does show modal, right? Obviously, we've got it on our thumbs. So if we come back over here and refresh, right, we can see it shows the modal and displays it on the page. The problem is it's always displaying the same ship heading out to the Atlantic. So let's go in here now, and we have to figure out how to replace the information for this here with with something related to, let me just add this in here, heading out to sea. We need to replace the content here with an image and the proper fig caption. Right? So we've got our dialogue, and then we're looking for just the figure inside that dialogue, right? So we don't want to replace the button, right? We just want to, I'm going to have to make a figure. This shouldn't really change anything, but let's just make sure it doesn't. And so I've just added that figure so it keeps it the same, but we can see it here in the code or in the inspect that figure is now part of it. Okay. So I'm going to do dialog and then query selector, and I'm looking for the figure. And here I'm going to set the inner HTML to be equal to, right? So I'm going to go get the closest figure here, and then we're going to get the inner HTML from the thumbnail that we clicked on. So literally what we're doing is we're transferring the information, the HTML inside the figure into here inside the figure using getters and setters. So this one before the equal sign is a setter. We're setting the inner HTML. And this one over here after the equal sign is a getter. So we're getting it here and setting it here. And let's see if that works. Dialog is not defined. It's not dialog. I called it modal. There we go. So we can see we've got something different, and we've got something different here. And now if I click outside, does it close? It still doesn't close. There we go. Oh, I know. If we go back to the dialog and we looked at, let me just do a search, close by. Okay, so here if we put closed by any, then anything that we click on will be should close the dialog box. So let's go grab that, and we're going to put that into the attributes of our dialog box. And then if we come back here and refresh, it's closing and opening up right away. And if we want to close it, we can do that. Perfect. Again, it's a slightly different thing than what I was thinking, but there you go. So the next thing we need to do, and this is going to be a little bit trickier, is we want to replace the small thumbnail image with, and now it's different, with the larger version of it, right? So we can see here, right, we're still getting the thumbs. So essentially we want to get rid of this thumbs, right? And so to do that, we're going to use the substring property. So let's take a look at what the substring does. Right? So we know here I'm getting the figure. Let's go back to here. Right? We know here we're getting the figure. So if I come back and refresh, and we look in the console, we're getting the figure. And what we want to do after is get the source of the image and then strip out everything except for the actual file name. Or actually we want to strip out this thumbs 400. Right? So we're going to do a query selector just to get the image. And then, yeah, so let's just see if that works first. Right? So now we've got just the image, and then if we add a dot source, right? So this is a property of the image. Let's see if this works. Yeah, so now you can see what we're getting is just the source. Well, let's take this and make it into a variable. So this variable is going to change, right? Depending on which image or thumbnail we click on. So we're going to use let to create this variable, and we'll do thumb img, right? So that'll give us the give us that, and we'll make that equal to, right, this whole thing with the console log, right? And we can get rid of that. And then if we do console info and we put in the thumb image, right, and we come back here and we should still see that we're getting that image, right? So we're getting the different images here. Okay. And then what we want to do is do that substring. So I'm going to do thumb image again equals thumb image dot substring, and if I put 0, 10, then what it should do is it should give me just the first 10 digits of it. Right? If I put 16, it will start at 16 and go to the end. So refresh, and so now you can see, right, we're getting to the end. The next trick that we've got is the last index of. So if I just do a quick search, mdn last index of, here we go. You can see it returns a number. So if the word is canal, right, we can see there's 2 A's, and so if we do last index of A, it goes 0, 1, 2, 3. So this A is at index 3 of this string, right? So for us, what we want to do is get the last index of the slash, because this slash, because after the last slash, we have just the file name. So instead of writing 16 in here, we're going to do thumb image dot last index of, right? And you can see the capitalization on last index, So it's a camel case, starts with a small letter, small l, then it has a capital I and a capital F. So a capital for every word after the first one. So last index of, and we're going to pass it in the slash, right? And so that should give us the number of the last slash, and then we're doing substring on it, so we should get from there to the end. Let me see if make sure I saved. Boop. Right, so now you can see we're just getting that. Okay, we're just getting the file name, and that's, we can look at another one, and we can see, right, it's working. We're getting a different file name each time. So here, what I want to do is in that modal, I'm going to get the image, and I'm going to set the source to be equal to thumb image, no, equal to images, because they're in a subfolder, plus thumb image. All right, so this plus is actually a concatenation. So I'm adding on to, or I'm concatenating or putting the thumb image beside images. And so let's see if this works. There we go. Right, so now we're getting the large size images, not the small size images. Let me just come back in here and to the CSS, and I think it's actually going to look a little bit better. If the dialog is like 95, so we can kind of see around the edges a little bit. Yeah, there we go. And maybe even smaller, maybe even like 90. Might have to change this a little bit depending on the size of the thing, or we might have to change that depending on the size of the browser, the view width of the browser, but you can see it's working. So if we look at this one, we've got a nice little like 4:3. This one, a little 16:9. This one, it's 9:16, and you can see here it's a little too large. So let's go back and see why. Oh, we've set the width to 100, and let's do max height, 90 viewport height. There we go. Perfect. Right, so now it doesn't really matter whether it is... we've got the close disappearing. Wonder if we make it a bit smaller. Inspect. So image, max height. Yeah, it looks like '83. Yeah, let's try 83. And might have to change that around again once we do some more testing, but I think we're pretty good. So we've added obviously our application, our gallery is working pretty well. There's still some styling and things to make it look better. We haven't added any animation yet. We can see here already they've got some stuff for adding animation. Where is it here? Here, right? So they've got some things for adding animations, which is pretty cool. So they've got a fade in and a little bit of scaling on these animations, and they've got a fade out for both the dialog box and for the background. So that'll add something nice in a future one. We've added some CSS for the modal styles, so you guys can refer to these. Essentially, we're fixing the position of the modal at the top of the, well, and here at the top of the page. And so, or not at the top of the page, but at the top of the browser, it's fixed, right? So it's always 5% down from the top of the browser. And so we can see that that works well in mobile, and it works well at large sizes, right? And we should be good. And then after that, we've got the background or the backdrop that we've set so it allows us to see the image and without the background or the thumbnails in the back competing. We've set a width and height for the actual image. And yeah, so that's the CSS. And then for the JavaScript, if we do a reading now, and I can get rid of this console, so Command/. If we do a reading, you can see on line 3, we're selecting all of the figures. Right? On line 6, we're selecting the dialog box, and we've created 2 variables, one called a thumbnail and the other one called modal. On lines 8 through 11, we're looping through using a for each loop each of the thumbnails, which we've renamed as thumb, or we're using a variable thumb, adding a click event listener that calls the show modal function, and you can see that here. In the show modal function, we're capturing the event, and we're finding the source of the image, right? So the actual source attribute right here of the image by finding the closest figure and creating a variable called thumb image. And so that gives us the long path of our thumb image. And then using substring and last index of, we're getting rid of all of the information and just keeping the image name. And then here we're changing the everything that's in the dialog box. So we're replacing everything that's in the figure, sorry. So with this image and this fig caption. And then we are swapping out the thumbnail image for the full-size image. So we're in my case, it's instead of doing images thumbs 400 and then the file name for the image, we're just doing images and then the file name for the image, and that's because I've got my images directly in the images folder, right? So depending on what you've named your thumbs folder and depending on your structure inside your images, or if it's IMG or assets or something like that, you might have to change this. All right. So I hope this helps, and what's left to do is to add some animation. We'll be talking about adding animation this week.